Hi everyone, hope everyone's having a great week so far. This week we're going to be talking about climate change education and schooling, so looking into climate education as a whole, looking into the ways it is a part of schooling, the ways it is not, recommendations, practices such as those. We are both really passionate about this project. I know we're both very excited to be guiding you through all of these learnings this week, so I hope you all enjoy our presentation. I will be starting us off and I'll talk about the first few readings assigned to us by Dr. Fields, and then there'll be a secondary video later in the presentation to do the rest of the readings there. The first part that I want to talk about is the Acting for Change report. This was a report that basically wished to prove that education is a vital part of climate change. This was a report done with the help of 8 Southern Ontario teachers who took part in these climate change meetings, who then gave responses. Because we all know that education is a vital part of the conversation here. If we are ill-informed, our students are ill-informed, the change cannot happen. It's point blank that. So essentially we're really proving that education is the first step. Schooling is the first step. If we are unable to have climate change be a part of the conversations that occur in schools, nothing's gonna change. The climate change situation will just continue to get worse and worse and worse. And so we need to recognize that education is a necessary and very crucial and very important step, a step that needs to be prioritized and to be put at the forefront of this conversation. So it was a really great report because it just proves how much education is needed within climate change. We need to ensure that that is a part of the conversation of climate change as a whole. The teachers then also gave innovative but practical ways schools can approach climate change. So there are 8 great examples in there about ways in which we can incorporate climate change into our classrooms. Climate change isn't necessarily shown in the curriculum to the degree that it should be. It's not as reflected as it should be, and so a lot of the times teachers need to kind of make up their own thing. I know I've been there, I'm sure a lot of you have too, where you have an idea and you try to make it work because you're just trying to give a message to your students, and so that was really important as well. And then there's also recommendations for future schooling. So one recommendation that really stuck with me, I don't want to summarize everything, but one that I think is really important is we need to make it fun. So this article is a really great resource for educators to see what climate change should be and how we can help each other, how we can help fellow educators get there. We need to make space for education. When we're talking about climate change, we need to make space for schools and for students and for the future, who are going to be the ones leading this charge eventually. And so we would be doing them a disservice if we did not involve them in that conversation as soon as possible. I also want to touch base on the Green Learning Agenda. This is essentially looking at the ways in which our curriculum can be more green, can involve climate change in a better way, in a more efficient way. Basically, this looks into COVID-19 and the way it disrupted the school system, and we need to take that opportunity of disruption to build differently, to build more efficiently. It really looks at the underlying causes of non-quality education and the reason why we do not have climate change education in our current curriculum. We can look at then the underlying causes, such as the underlying economic issues, the inequality issues that exist, the social issues that exist in our current system, and break them down, find the root problem, and then build back up. And this would include quality education for climate change, which is something that is needed, something that is very desired at this point. I really love that we're able to look at these issues and see a reason to build up differently. With the new approaches suggested by the Green Learning Agenda, we want to then very much put a focus point on those who are most vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. We saw this in previous weeks, but we see that those who are most vulnerable to climate change are unfortunately not at the forefront of most conversations. It's really they're vulnerable to climate change, the impacts of climate change, and they're the ones being affected the most by the climate change, but they're not being protected in the way that they need to protect. So the framework of this agenda really wants to ensure that the needs of those vulnerable peoples are at the forefront of the conversation. We want to make sure that everyone is included. Okay, cool. The last thing that we're going to be touching base on in this part of the video is the climate change action for youth. So that is a study done that looked into the influences on young people's decision makings towards climate change and climate change action. So it's looking at the cognitive factors, it's looking at the psychosocial factors, and how those certain factors have an influence on the way in which students, specifically young students, regard climate change and climate change action and climate change education. We saw, unfortunately, in this study that I think is really, really important to note is that there is a lack of prior knowledge in climate change education. We'll touch base on this later, but basically we need to start them off young. We need to make sure we're informing students not right before they're leaving school, but as quickly as we possibly can about the importance of climate change action and climate change knowledge. Climate change is an issue that is not going away. It is getting worse. It is coming quickly. We even see through things like the Paris Agreement that this agreement was made in place and needs to be done quickly, or else we're not going to be able to recover. And so we need to make sure our students are informed. And unfortunately, we show that students are not informed at the level they need to be. I know that when I'm teaching, one goal I have is to ensure that students are leaving my classroom as informed citizens, as people who eventually, with the knowledge I give to them, they can be functioning adults in the real world that can make their own decisions. They are able to think critically, think creatively, all of these things. And being an informed citizen nowadays involves having had some sort of climate education done. It's not something that should be pushed aside, that should be ignored. And we're seeing, unfortunately, that not all students have that basic line knowledge that they need to have in the current social climate that we live in which social issues revolve around climate change at certain times. So it's really interesting to look at the gap between knowledge and action that exists within students nowadays, which is why climate education and schooling is just so important.